right, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the Most Killeleagh Show. I'm here with Monica Lesslie. So if you're local to the area, you probably know her because her name comes up often in so many different circles and worlds. But the reason why I wanted to have her here today is a special one. And before we get to that, for those of you who are not familiar with this show, we've been doing this for about 4 years now, and it started as a way to have a different outlet and a different outlook when it comes to what the focus is in our media. You could turn on the TV or a podcast or the news anytime and hear all the doom and gloom of the world, right? But there's so much beautiful happening in the world from the people and the places that surround us. And it's what we focus on that matters. So I wanted to be able to bring to the world more of what's happening in our local community around the world. Of course, Monica, where in the world is Monica right now, right? We'll talk about that later. So, you know, and the evolution has been really into this space of values-driven living, talking to people who build businesses that are values-driven businesses, imagine that, and really allowing for this journey itself right here on this very podcast to unfold as the message needs to shift. And so that's really today's message. We're going to be talking a lot about allowing the journey of life to unfold, trusting in the process, and especially as we walk into the week ahead, really understanding that we are not the circumstances of the world that surround us. And again, no better person than Monica to have this conversation with. So Monica, you started here in Seneca Falls, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about your journey because it's been a wild one. I feel like for a very long time, I have felt so connected to you on this like soul friend level. And I've watched you just truly embrace the journey that is life and follow the threads of like, what's next, what's tugging at my heart, what's next. So let's chat about that a little bit as we welcome in this new year.
Right. Where to begin? I'm not sure where to begin. I knew I wanted to be a physical therapist from a program that I did in high school. So I jumped into that decision, applied early decision to the college that I wanted to go to and got in. Thought I wanted to work with Olympic athletes. Tried to set that up, was in line to set that up. Did it, went to Aspen, did an internship there, worked with Olympic athletes. But the woman who I was staying with then changed the direction of my life, or my experience with her changed the direction of my life. So here I am thinking I'm going this path and then pivot and go this path because I realized that lots and lots of people want to work with Olympic athletes. There is no shortage of attention there. And I thought something in the greater scope was missing. So that took me in the direction of meeting the Dalai Lama, learning how to meditate, got interested in yoga, decided that how many details to go into? I wanted to do a yoga teacher training. Long story short, had an opportunity that actually started in Aspen to live in New Zealand for a little while. So I did that, fell in love with the weather in New Zealand, decided I would go live in California just because California was the place because the weather was great there, similar to New Zealand. And the people and the culture I thought would help to teach me some of these new things I was interested in, such as yoga. So thought I would explore it, went out as a travel therapist. So there was the edge, right? We were talking about riding our edges and staying inside this box that we build for our life earlier. And how important it is to explore those edges in life, right? So that was me playing it a bit safe in terms of going to California as a travel physical therapist because I had a life in New York at the time and a boyfriend and all of that stuff. And so I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Travel PT, okay, 13 weeks in California, playing the edge a little bit, had a safe place to return to if I changed my mind. But then thing after thing after thing kept leading me in this other direction. And I found a yoga teacher training in Bali that I wanted to do, made that happen. Then I did Ayurvedic wellness counselor school for a year, also in California, amongst doing the yoga teacher training, amongst running a PT practice. Came back to New York, then decided to go back out to California. Was living in the Bay Area, went to a place called Esalen. Actually, I did another yoga teacher training and then went to Esalen to learn this cortical field reeducation method technique that I then decided, and here's playing the edge again. So actually, let me backtrack. The first time I went to California, travel PT, that was like approaching the edge. I wasn't super skilled in playing the edge of this box yet. Go back to California after I'd gone home and traveled the world with my boyfriend at the time and all of that. There was playing closer to some edges, but still safe. Then moved back to California to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then found CFR, this training. So I'm in the Bay Area, and now I have an opportunity where I can move down to Southern California to take a 4-year post-professional training. And I don't know anyone, and I don't have a place to stay, and I have no idea what it's going to be like, and not quite sure. I knew it was the move, but I didn't know what it was going to look like in any way. And that was a going with your gut and riding the edge experience for me, purely. And it changed my life. And then full circle, we take the past 10 years of my life and turn it into 3 minutes. I am now working with an Olympic athlete and possibly more moving forward, and bringing in everything that I've learned over the past 13 years that aren't just straight athletic performance techniques, and these things that you can bring in that many, many athletes miss in their training, and use those techniques and those tools and those mindsets and perspectives to completely enhance what both they are capable of and human beings in general. And so those are some ways that I've played my edges, is kind of really living a life off of the beaten path and keeping my eyes open, living my life with my eyes open, so that when the opportunities present themselves, I can feel into my body. And if it's a gigantic yes, sometimes I don't think about all of the rest of the details that it might take to make it happen, because that would make me say no potentially. And I just go for it and figure it out along the way, and life figures itself out. We don't always have control over what we think we have control over. So if you live your life only playing within the lines where you perceive control, it will be small.
I love that. And there's so many different threads that I want to pull there, right? Yeah. So it's first of all, you make me think of the book by Richard Bach, Running from Safety. And that's a lot of what we're talking about here, right? It's if we're playing.
But what is safe?
Right, exactly.
Look at our world right now.
It's our idea of what that is, right? But when you look at what is going on in the world, and even just the shifts that many of us have experienced in recent years, it's examining that predominant paradigm, all the things we've been taught about, what we're supposed to do, going to school, getting the job, buying a house, doing the things, right? These are all the prescribed milestones in our life. And that can feel safe, but it's such an illusion. And that's what so much of that book talks about, right? And so being able to really explore and push those, I've often talked about it in terms of boundaries, right? It's even if you own a piece of land, you have these boundaries around the piece of land, right? And here we're pushing the boundaries, we're expanding what it is we're actually able to experience and take in our life. And I've always admired that about you. And I think that's the piece I really identified with way back when, was the ability to kind of throw out the idea of what everybody else's expectations are. Because yes, even though you did go to school, get the degree, do the things, you also simultaneously began that journey of pushing those edges and expanding what it is that you wanted in your world. Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I want to talk about as we head into this new year is, you know, what that looks like for the everyday person. Because I remember way back when I was still in finance and watching you begin this journey, the idea of following your bliss or following your dreams was one that was really foreign to me, because I was like, okay, what are the dreams? What is my bliss, right? And I had not yet really begun to awaken to that.
Exactly.
Also, my story has shifted too, right? But I did know at a certain point that I could begin to pull some of these threads myself in my own life. Like, what were the things that brought me joy? What were the things that really made me feel most alive? And those were clues. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about that for a little bit, about like some of the feelings, some of the knowing that helped you shift and pivot along that journey?
Yeah, I've had one recently this year. 2020 was a very interesting, informative, exciting, sad, huge year for me in the area of understanding what is personally important to me on a soul level. I've spent a lot of time understanding what's important to me on a objective level in terms of where I want my career to go potentially, and some other details. But to your point, on a soul level this year, I discovered that there are a couple of very important things that are non-negotiables for me moving forward in my life. I lived on a farm in Oregon for 6 months and woke up every morning, and at some point in the first few hours of waking up, my feet were on the ground, in the dirt, in the grass. I was planting plants, trees, fruit trees, all sorts of things with my hands. It was an experience that I had always been drawn to, but had not yet in my life actually sunk into. And it changed me. It opened me up in a way that I had not yet experienced in my life, and it brought this information into my heart of something that is this deep-seated contentedness, this happiness level that doesn't really have to do with anybody else. It was my own vibration, my own sense of who am I on this deep, deep level that I discovered when I was working with the earth, when I had my feet, no shoes on the ground, not on pavement, but in dirt and grass, playing with these geese that we got and the chickens, and eating, eggs. And I had other experiences leading up to that point that kept drawing me in, but nothing so consistent as this, where it was a thing that was happening every single day for months at a time, and so much fresh air and amazing water to drink, and connection with people in a different way that I had experienced before in my life. And so that was information for me. Now, it's during COVID times. I, again, went up to Oregon, living on this farm, kind of a random decision, a little bit strange. And I took the chance to do it. And although there were other emotions involved and things are different now, I wouldn't change a moment of it. The information that it gave me, the love that it gave me in my heart for something that I discovered in a deep sense of myself, is absolutely priceless and valuable. And so now let's bring that forward. I know that the choices I will make now moving forward in my life, because it's all choices, right? We can choose to stay small. We can choose to go this direction. We can choose to go that direction. If you have no idea where you want to go, how do you know what choices are the best for you as an individual to make? So my choices around that moving forward is that I know that as I progress, as more opportunities come, or as there's splits in the roads and opportunities to pivot or shift, that's my direction. I will build a life where there's an availability for me to have my feet in the grass every morning. And I live in Southern California right now. Yeah, you can go to the beach. You can technically have your feet in the grass every morning, but that's not it, right? I want to go outside and pick the vegetables from my garden that go into my dinner that night, you know, and I likely will have planted those vegetables. And maybe there's more stuff going on the outskirts that I'm not in charge of or directly doing, but on a smaller level, that was a huge piece of information for me. And so, yeah, I think it's important that as individuals, we keep our eyes open to discover those things. For me, that was a big one. But on a daily basis, we can come up with these little bits of information that give us this knowing of where we will be most fulfilled in our life. It's not about creating, you know, you can't have excitement and extreme happiness all the time. There's going to be waves. It's going to ebb and flow. But if you can create this underlying level of contentness and fulfilledness in your life, you will lead a different life. You will breathe easier on a regular basis, and you don't have to be making millions of dollars for that. Yes, you need to be able to put food on your table and pay your bills and stuff like that. But if the goal becomes more about the quality of your life and less about the things, the objective things, the tangible things that you're holding, the opportunity to live a fulfilled life, even when there's chaos all around and things that we can't control, and things that we can control with our dollar, with our vote, with, you know, things like that, you will have a clearer understanding of where you want to put your energy. How much energy do you want to put into changing this thing, changing this part of the government, changing these decisions that are made? This thing might be incredibly important to you. This thing may be not so important. But if you're not clear on where your fulfillment level lies, and if community is important to you, which I think it is more, most people or some people may not realize the value of community, and other people may understand that it is one of the top things that are important in most humans' lives. We need to support community on a global level. Where in yourself are you interested in putting energy into that? You know, so we can develop these questions. If we ask ourselves the right questions, we can come up with the answers. It's oftentimes not difficult to come up with the answer. It's harder to sometimes find the right questions to ask ourselves. And so if we can tune in and figure out the questions, the answers just show up.
Okay.
So I think moving into 2021, there's a large importance in, hi Jack.
There's Octonaut pants and an Octonaut shirt that Gaga got for me.
Okay, you can sit right here and play, Levy.
So moving into 2021, I believe that if we can put some emphasis on what are the important questions that we need to ask ourselves right now? Yeah. What is it important for us to, we only have so much energy, and every day we have an amount of energy as a human that you are able to put out. What things can we do to optimize that level of energy that we have? There are answers to that, maybe slightly different for each person. What do we want to direct that energy towards, and who with?
Right, right.
Who are our people? There's a lot of people out there sometimes, and these days we do need to be selective about who we are spending and sharing that space with, for many different reasons, including now health reasons. So I believe it is very important to get clear on those answers by asking the important questions that sometimes we don't do the things to even give ourselves enough energy to ask those questions.
Right.
Sometimes there are people that wake up tired, and they start the day tired, and they're not going to sit and ask inquisitive questions, self-inquiry questions to themselves. So how can that change?
Right.
And so those are things that I will be using my voice to speak on a lot more also in 2021, because I've gotten clear on what I'm going to use my voice for moving forward. That's another thing that I got out of last year.
That's beautiful. The word that keeps coming to mind, Monica, is the word nourish and nourishment, right? It's like,
and that happened to me last year.
Yeah.
On a deeper level than I had ever experienced before in my life, probably.
Yeah. I mean, we spend a lot of time, we invest a lot of time in things like, you know, what's the next meal, you know, like, what am I having for dinner? What am I, you know, who am I going to go hang out with tonight? Now, obviously in 2020, that shifted a little bit, but instead of thinking about it like that, it's like the question of what foods are going to nourish my body?
Right. How do I want to feel? Most of us would love to feel nourished.
Right. And what kinds of conversations nourish my soul? What kind of people nourish my emotional well-being? Yeah, baby, you can open that. You know, so that shift alone into like moving from these sort of functional and perfunctory mechanical ways of going about life into this space of like, how can I truly nourish myself? And, you know, I feel like 2020 gave us a lot of gifts that, as one of my favorite mentors says, we're wrapped in sandpaper, right? One of the gifts for a lot of people has been at least a little bit of pause.
Yeah.
You know, if not a great pause, at least a little bit of pause to reflect and to start asking these questions.
Because when that pause, you now have this extra bit of energy to ask the questions and to hopefully choose to listen and act on those answers. That the action, because of the information you receive, can you then act? Can you not let it just be this whirlwind of words in your head, but instead, can you act on that information that you receive? Because in those actions, your life will change. Your habits will change. Your choices, the choices that you make will lead you in more informative direction towards what is fulfilling for you, because you're clear on what is fulfilling for you as an individual.
Yeah. And when you talk about the habits and the choices, it brought me back to a moment when I started to play with very little choices and habits. And so when people, if you're watching or listening and you're thinking to yourself, like, I still don't really know. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know. Right? If you're still in that space, one of the things that helped me when I was in this very full time in life, but I knew that something needed to shift, was I would just start to do one thing a day differently, right? So instead of driving home from work on the same road every time, I would try a different way every time, right? Like every day, let's make one new turn. Let's go one different direction. Or I would change the sequence of my morning routine or the things that I was nourishing myself with for lunchtime. And all of a sudden these clues pop up, right? It's the clues that you experienced when you were on the farm. Like these moments of revelation when you're like, oh, right, this is how I want to feel in my life. And I haven't felt this yet.
Right.
But I'm going to continue to create moments to continue to feel that. Yeah. So I think the last thing I'd really love to leave people with is this idea, you know, we're heading into what is potentially like a pretty wild week, right? We've already had some interesting events leading up to this, you know, shift in our government. And so I love to remind people, okay, we'll put something in there. I love to remind people that, you know, we are not these circumstances, and we do get to choose even how much of the information we take in and how we take it in, right? Because we all know that, you know, a lot of what we're seeing and hearing and experiencing is being manipulated and reported, you know, according to whatever agenda is out there. So I remind myself just by meditation, right? Like by sitting and touching back to that deep place within myself that is eternal and going like, okay, this is not me. This is not even me, but this is really not me. So let's go to that space where, you know, I can create calm in the chaos.
Come off. I want it to come off.
So can you talk about that too, Monica? Like how would you help somebody? Like if you had a client and they really needed help shifting into a place where they could understand that they could detach from that. What are some of the things that you would have them do?
I've been talking about this a lot with people very, very recently, actually. And I think people have different ways of looking at meditation, which can be a very, very useful tool in times like this when there is a lot of chaos and things that are out of our control happening. What is the one thing that we can control? Is our mind, right? So how do you do that? Many people can't control their mind. And when, you know, almost that no one can control their mind in every moment. We diverge. We have these thoughts that just come in, and that's okay. But if we could wrap some control around more and more and more mental processes that we have, how would that change things? How would that change the amount of energy that we have to give out or to give ourselves instead of wasting it on cycling thought patterns that just go, 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 and send us into either anxiety if it's future thought patterns, or depression if it's past thought patterns. How can we be right here? If you are not in the future and you are not in the past, you are present. So what if we can control dropping ourselves into the present moment? We can. How do we do that? You sit down, you close your eyes, you focus on one thing, oftentimes easy, your breath, easy. Simplest is to focus on your breath, and oftentimes it is not easy because our mind will wander forward, backwards, right, left, and that's okay because it's just a practice. It is not something that you are trying to perfect when you wake up and you do it tomorrow morning. So time of day is important. If you do it first thing in the morning, there's two ways to look at it. Both are important. One, you're getting it done first thing in the morning. So there are many, many, many less excuses that you can come up with for yourself if you do it first thing in the morning versus if you say you're going to do it before bed at night. Your mind will, by that time, have so many reasons why there is not enough time to sit for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes with your eyes closed, focusing on your breath. So I recommend doing it in the morning. You do not have to have a special practice taught to you by a teacher, a guru, or whatever. You don't have to know anything except that you sit. It is good to have your spine straight, your eyes are closed, and you focus on your breath or the sensation of air coming in your nose and out your mouth, or in your nose and out your nose. So, and the reason for that is to just focus on one thing instead of having all of these options. We just hone in and focus on one thing. The second reason that it's really great to do it in the morning is that you're setting yourself up for the rest of the day. You will show up differently for the rest of your day when you give yourself that time, that nourishment. If you think of it as a nourishing practice, not as this crazy, difficult, challenging thing, or as a tired, sleepy thing, either end of the spectrum or somewhere in between. But if it's your nourishment for yourself for the day, you sit, you pick the amount of time you sit, do it in the same space in your home every day, because it will create a vibration. You will be able to drop in faster over time if it's in the same space. I promise you that you will start to feel the energy of the space shifts after consistency in that physical space that you're in. So if it's possible for you and realistic, you do it in the same place every day. And you just show up. The hardest thing is to sit your butt down and actually just start. And then when you're in, you're in. So you don't have to tell yourself, I'm going to do it for 20 minutes today. I'm going to do it for half an hour. I'm going to do it for 5. Promise yourself, commit to yourself that you're going to just show up. You're going to sit down in whatever position you're sitting down in, which also doesn't matter. You can do it in a chair. You can be comfortable. You can lean your back up against the chair. There's not so many rules. We think there's all these rules around these things, when really it's about consistency of showing up and giving yourself that time to focus. When you do that, you will fill yourself up with another energy that allows you to give more out. Give more to yourself, give more to your child, give more to your partner and the community that you're choosing to surround yourself with, and things become more clear. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it is a spectrum. It may become a little bit more clear the next day, a little bit more clear the next day, a little bit more clear, and then less clear. But it's not going like this. It's not a wave like that. It's a wave like this. And you do go up and up and up towards the top of that mountain. And the clarity, the understanding, the focus that you will have, the creativity that will drop itself into your life, those things will come when it's consistent. Think 80-20 rule. 80% consistency, 20% cutting yourself some slack and not driving into perfectionism, because that is also not healthy. So my recommendation would be, 80% of you set a goal, you need to meet it 80% of the time. We try to meet it 80% of the time so that there's some softness around it. Softness around the discipline, because the discipline is an important part. It's, I find, especially living in Southern California, that people in that area, as a generality, have a difficult time making commitments and sticking to them. I do think that there is a difference in that on the East Coast. People, as a generality, commit to things more easily on the East Coast. But as humans, we could work, all of us, on improving our commitment to ourselves in the way of discipline. Many of us, and we're all at different places on that. But even I find the more disciplined people are actually trying even harder to be more disciplined with certain things. So if everybody chose to just sit for 2 minutes or more, 5 or 6 days a week, 5 days a week, a couple minutes, we could collectively start to change things because of the side effects, the results that come from taking that time. So that would be my advice for moving into 2021, is to give yourself that time and space to nourish your heart and come into your heart from your mind, to get out of this anxiety and the depression that have been elevated over the past year. And to start to ask yourself more questions and give yourself space to answer them.
I absolutely love it. I love it. I feel like, as I've had conversations, Monica, about developing a meditation practice, there's so many misconceptions, right? It's like, people will talk about not being able to sit for half an hour. And I'm like, it's okay. Don't sit for half an hour.
Yeah.
2 minutes, start there, right? Or they'll talk about not being able to quiet their mind. And it's like, that's a misconception too, right? We don't live, the life of a monk, right? Like we're not living in a monastery. We're living the lives of householders. And so what's helpful is just to notice it, right? Notice your mind racing, notice the thoughts that pop up, and then just come back to the breath and just continue that practice over and over again. And I think you're so right, from the personal impact to the community impact to the impact that it has on the world. If we could all just take 2 minutes a day, it would be a beautiful thing.
And pay attention. That was the thing I didn't say. We can do all of this mindlessly and not be present in paying attention. You must pay attention. Don't numb out. Don't numb yourself out. Pay attention to what's going on.
Absolutely. And, on that note, and then we can wrap up, because I know that you and I both have to get on with our day. My little guy has been so patient, by the way. This is mom life over here. But, that piece of it, the paying attention piece, my practice shifted so drastically from 10 years ago, when it was an item to check off the to-do list, to becoming this very present moments, right? And part of that was
Exactly.
having my son, right? You cannot be in the next moment or the moment before when you have a child sitting there with you. And so he's been a great teacher for me, because he will get on the mat with me in the morning and he will just sit, right? And how beautiful is that to start that now?
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for taking the time from wherever you are right now, dear Monica, to all of your friends here in the Finger Lakes who adore you, and everyone else who gets to watch, because it is the wide world of interweb, right? And I look forward to chatting more here in the future. So thank you. And everyone
Thank you
who's
for having me,
watching,
Melissa.
2021, welcome it in. Take Monica's words of advice here, and check in. Let me know how you're doing when you start those 2 minutes a day, because the impact over time is powerful. So thank you.
Be well.